I never thought refusing to save someone's life would turn me into the villain of the family. 3 weeks ago, my younger brother collapsed at work. Kidney failure, stage 4. Dialysis wasn't enough anymore. He needed a transplant fast. The hospital ran the compatibility tests, and as fate would have it, I was a match. Not just any match, but the best candidate in the family. Healthy, young, stable, and available. When the doctor told me, my stomach dropped. Not because I didn't care, of course I cared, but because I knew what would come next. The pressure, the guilt, the expectation that I would just say yes like I always did. The moment I walked out of the hospital room and saw my mother's hopeful face, I felt the no rising in my throat. And for once, I didn't swallow it. I need time, I told them. This isn't something I can decide overnight. They heard, I don't care if he dies. The shift was immediate. My brother looked at me like I had betrayed him. My mom blinked, stunned, and said softly, "But you're his only chance." She didn't ask how I felt. No one did. I was no longer the daughter, the sister, I was the organ. That night, my phone blew up with texts from my mom, from extended family, even from people I hadn't spoken to in years. You have a chance to save him. Why wouldn't you? What kind of sister hesitates? God is testing you. No one asked why I might hesitate. No one remembered I had my own health scares a few years ago. No one brought up the fact that my brother hadn't spoken to me in over a year before this because I refused to co-sign his business loan. He once told me I was selfish for not risking my credit to help him succeed. Now I was selfish for not risking my kidney. The irony was suffocating. But the moment that broke me wasn't the accusations or the phone calls. It was when my mother, sitting across from me in my apartment, looked me in the eye and said, "Even a stranger would have done more." And I realized something. To them, my value had never been about who I was, only about what I could give. And this time, I was giving them nothing. I'm 34 years old. I live alone in a small apartment just outside of Denver. I work as a research librarian at a local university, which sounds less exciting than it actually is. I spend my days surrounded by quiet order and history. Everything my family life is not. Growing up, I was the responsible one. The quiet, obedient daughter who did her homework, got good grades, helped with chores without being asked. My parents called me their rock, though they never seemed to treat me like one. My younger brother Jordan was the star, the loud, charming one, the dreamer, the risk-taker. And somehow, no matter how many times he stumbled, someone always caught him, usually me. Our dad died when I was 22 and Jordan was 20. I was finishing my master's degree at the time. Jordan had just dropped out of his second college program, deciding he was going to start his own business. My mom was devastated by the loss of my father, and I stepped in the way I always did. Helped pay bills, drove her to appointments, took on the emotional labor no one asked about. Meanwhile, Jordan started a series of doomed business ventures. First, a food truck, then an app, then a crypto coaching brand that was more Instagram posts than income. Every time he failed, my mom would say the same thing. He just needs time. He just needs someone to believe in him. When he needed help with credit, she came to me. When he needed cash, she hinted that I should help. Once he even asked me to take out a personal loan for him. I said no. That was when things turned. Jordan said I was selfish. My mom said I was being cold, that I was jealous of his ambition. The distance grew after that. I stopped going to family dinners. I answered calls less. I built a quiet life of my own, modest, steady, and safe. No chaos, no drama, just me, my books, and the peace I had carved out inch by inch. Until Jordan got sick. It started with fatigue and swelling. He brushed it off at first, blaming stress. But the diagnosis came quick and harsh: chronic kidney disease, stage 4. He'd need a transplant or face lifelong dialysis. That was when the spotlight returned, and once again it pointed at me. At first, I hoped the donor match would come from elsewhere. a cousin, a friend, even the National Registry. But when the doctor said I was the best candidate, young, healthy, compatible, I felt the world press down on me. Everyone acted like it was already decided. Jordan hadn't even looked me in the eye in months, but now he was asking if I'd be tested. My mom was already talking about dates and recovery plans, as if my consent was just a formality. When I asked for time to think, it was like I had cursed out loud in church. My mother came to my apartment 2 nights later, carrying a lasagna and expectations. She sat on my couch, looked around like she was evaluating my life choices, and said, "You have no kids. You're not married. If anyone can do this, it's you." As if my lack of obligations meant I owed more. That, because I wasn't building a family, my body should be available to serve hers. I didn't answer her that night. I just stared at the lasagna until it went cold. Later, I stood in my kitchen staring at the fridge door, remembering how my father used to leave me notes on it. Encouragements. Tiny affirmations. "You're doing great. Proud of you always." He had been the only one who saw me for more than what I could provide. Without him, I was back to being the background character in Jordan's spotlight. And this time, they didn't want my time or my money. They wanted a part of my body. The official call came on a Wednesday morning. I was shelving periodicals in the history section when my phone buzzed. It was the transplant coordinator from the hospital. "We've completed the compatibility testing," she said. "You're an excellent match for your brother. Physiologically, you're the best option we've found." Her voice was gentle, clinical, not pushy. But behind her calm tone, I could feel the weight of expectation sliding into place. I thanked her, hung up, and leaned against the shelving cart until my knees stopped trembling. I told no one at first. Not Jordan, not my mom. I needed space to think. That lasted exactly 2 days. Friday evening, I received a group message from my mother. A long paragraph about family miracles and the gift of life. She hadn't even waited for me to bring up the results. Jordan chimed in a few minutes later with a simple, "So are we doing this, we?" Like this was a shared project. Like this decision didn't belong to my body alone. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I drove home and took the long way. Windows down, music low, thinking. When I finally texted back, it was carefully worded, "I'm still processing everything. I understand the urgency, but I need time to fully think this through." The reply came almost instantly. From Jordan. "Time, you think I have time." From my mom. "You're making this harder than it has to be. He's your brother." By Sunday, the phone calls started. First, my mother. She left 3 voicemails escalating from pleading to passive-aggressive. Then came Aunt Valerie, who I hadn't spoken to in 6 months. She told me about a friend of hers who donated a kidney and was totally fine after 2 weeks. Uncle Craig called next, suggesting that I stop overthinking things. But the worst came on Monday night. I had just finished making dinner when Jordan showed up at my door. I didn't even know he knew my address. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes, shoulders hunched. But his tone wasn't soft. It was sharp, accusatory. "I don't get it," he said, standing in my hallway like he owned the space. "What's the problem? You have nothing going on. No kids, no husband, no big career. What are you so scared of?" I froze. I hadn't invited him in, but he stepped closer anyway. "I mean, what is your life really?" he continued. "Why not do something meaningful for once?" That was it. That was the line. I looked him straight in the eye and said, "You're standing in the apartment I paid for myself with a job I kept for 10 years while you burned through every opportunity you were handed. Don't talk to me about meaning." He didn't flinch. "So this is about resentment," he said, "not fear." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He'd already decided what my silence meant. He left after 10 minutes, slamming the door behind him. Not once did he ask how I was feeling. Not once did he consider that maybe I had reasons beyond just anger. The next morning, I woke up to another wave of messages. This time from cousins from my mother's church group, even from one of Jordan's exes. They all said some version of the same thing. This is your chance to do the right thing. God put you in his life for a reason. You'll regret this if he dies. It felt less like a request and more like a verdict. I wasn't a person anymore. I was a vessel, a container for a kidney, a symbol of morality or selfishness, depending on how I answered. Then midweek, my mom showed up at work. I was in the staff lounge pouring coffee when she walked in unannounced. Her hair was pulled back and she looked exhausted, but her voice was firm. "We don't have time for your doubts," she said. "Jordan is getting worse." She pulled out a folded paper from her purse, some medical document, probably notes from his last appointment. "You don't have to decide everything now, just start the process. We can always cancel later." I stared at her. "So I'm supposed to say yes now and maybe back out later? That's your plan?" She avoided my eyes. "I'm asking you," she said quietly, "as your mother." That word hit me in a way I hadn't expected, because suddenly I realized she wasn't really asking. She was invoking the contract we'd never signed, but I'd always honored, the one where I sacrifice and she applauds my strength later. But not this time. Not for this. I told her I wasn't ready, that I needed to talk to a doctor, a therapist, someone outside this emotional tornado. She didn't respond. She stood, lips pressed tight, and said before leaving, "Even a stranger would have done more for him." The same line. Word for word, just like before. And again, it landed exactly how she intended. Right in the guilt. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out when exactly I became someone who had to justify protecting her own body. Was it this year, this week, or had it started much earlier, long before Jordan got sick? I closed my eyes and let the memories come. I was 9 years old when I had my first solo piano recital. I had practiced for weeks. My dad helped me rehearse. He always loved classical music, said it helped build discipline. That day, I wore my favorite blue dress and matching ribbon. The auditorium wasn't big, but to me it felt like Carnegie Hall. But 5 minutes before I was supposed to go on, Jordan, who was 7 at the time, tripped in the parking lot and scraped his knee. It wasn't serious, just a little blood. He wailed like his leg had been cut off. My mom rushed to him, fussed, panicked, and ended up missing my entire performance. Dad stayed behind, clapped the loudest, told me I was wonderful, but when we got home, the only topic over dinner was how brave Jordan had been. At 13, I was accepted into an advanced science camp. Competitive, expensive, and something I had begged for all year. 2 days before camp, my mom said we couldn't afford it after all. Jordan had broken another phone and needed a new one. "You'll have other chances," she said. "He needs it now." I didn't argue. I never did. That became my silent role in the family, the one who didn't make things harder. At 16, I got my first job at a bookstore. I saved up slowly for a used laptop. When I finally bought it, Jordan borrowed it just for the weekend. I never saw it again. When I asked, he said he traded it for concert tickets. Mom shrugged. "He's impulsive. You know that." At 22, during my final year of grad school, Dad was diagnosed with cancer. It moved fast. I was 2 months away from graduation when he entered hospice. I dropped everything, moved back home, and took care of him while my mom worked and Jordan traveled for networking. I sat by my father's bedside every night. I helped him bathe, eat, sleep. I missed my own graduation ceremony. No one thanked me. Not even after he passed. Jordan gave the eulogy. Talked about how Dad had believed in his dreams. Never mentioned me once. After Dad's funeral, I stayed home another year to help Mom adjust. I got a job nearby, put off moving out. Jordan had already left something about needing space to grieve. He moved into a high-rise apartment with rent he couldn't afford, using money from one of Dad's old accounts. When I finally moved out at 24, I thought things would change. I thought maybe distance would reset the balance. But the pattern only continued. Mom's check-ins were still mostly about Jordan. his failed businesses, his breakups, his big ideas. Every time he fell, she expected me to help cushion the blow. At 27, Jordan called me out of nowhere. His tone was sweet, apologetic, almost childlike. He said he wanted to reconcile, that he missed me, that maybe we'd been too hard on each other. I softened. We met for coffee. An hour later, he asked me to co-sign a business loan, said it was a sure thing. I told him I couldn't. My credit was decent, but I had just started rebuilding after years of helping Mom. He got quiet, then cold, then angry. Wow, he said. All that talk about family, and you can't even put your name on a line for me. That was the last time we spoke until he got sick. Now he was back, and suddenly I was family again. Suddenly, I was someone he needed. I sat up in bed, looked around my quiet apartment, the one I'd worked hard to make mine. The framed photo of Dad on my bookshelf. The plants I had managed not to kill. The calendar on the wall still filled with work deadlines and to-do lists. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Everything I had was earned. Slowly, quietly, carefully, not with charm or shortcuts, not with help from anyone. I got up, opened my laptop, and scrolled through old photos. Jordan always front and center, smiling, surrounded. Me usually at the edge, half-cropped, holding someone's bag. I remembered a birthday party we shared when I was 10. He threw a tantrum because he didn't get enough presents. I ended up giving him mine to calm him down. Everyone praised me for being such a good sister. I didn't get another birthday party for 5 years. They had trained me without even realizing it to sacrifice, to silence myself, to be the safety net. And now they expected me to give a part of my body because saying no would break the illusion they'd built that I was always dependable, always giving. It wasn't just about the kidney. It was about finally asking, when is it enough? I opened my journal and wrote the question in big black letters. How much of me do I have to give away before they think I'm worth something? The answer was clear. To them, there would never be enough. Not until there was nothing left. The following week, I scheduled a private appointment with a nephrologist who wasn't affiliated with Jordan's hospital. I needed a second opinion. Not just about the donation itself, but about what it would mean for me. Dr. Alvarez was calm and clear. She reviewed my charts, ran additional tests, and listened carefully when I told her I wasn't sure about donating. There's no shame in having doubts, she said. Living donation is major surgery. It affects your body long term. She explained that because of some markers in my blood work, slightly elevated protein levels, and borderline hypertension, I could be at higher risk for kidney issues later in life, especially if I donated now. It wasn't a red flag, but it was a consideration. One that no one else in my family seemed to care about. After the appointment, I sat in my car for a long time. The air conditioning was on, but I was sweating. I looked down at my hands on the steering wheel and thought, these hands have held my brother up more times than he'll ever remember. And now I'm the one falling. I called my mother that night, told her I wasn't going forward with the donation. She was silent at first. Then, without warning, she laughed. Not out of joy. It was sharp and bitter like a cracked mirror. So that's it, she said. You're just going to let your brother waste away. I told her it wasn't that simple. That I had risk factors, that it could endanger my own health, that I needed to prioritize myself this time. Her voice rose. You've never prioritized this family. You just think you have, always sitting on your high horse acting like the martyr. But when it really counts, when it really matters, you vanish. I didn't argue. I let her finish. I knew nothing I said would reach her. The next day, the calls and messages started again. But they were different this time. No more gentle persuasion, just blame. Jordan sent me a voice message. Thanks for nothing, he said. You've made your choice. Don't bother showing up when it's too late. Then he blocked me. The pain I felt wasn't sharp, it was slow and spreading like ink through fabric. But underneath it all, I also felt something I hadn't in a long time. Relief. For the first time, I had drawn a line, a real one, and I had kept it. But just because I had made peace with my decision didn't mean the world around me would. That weekend, I went to visit a close friend, Mel, someone who had known me since college. She had seen me through heartbreaks, job changes, family drama. She listened as I explained everything from the test results to the way my family had turned on me. When I finished, she leaned forward and said quietly, "You're allowed to choose yourself." "I know," I said. "I just didn't think it would hurt so much." She smiled sadly. That's the cost of unlearning how to be small. I stayed with her that night. When I woke up in the morning, there was coffee on the table and a note. P.S. You're not selfish. You're finally free. I returned home that Sunday and found an envelope taped to my apartment door. It was from my mom. Inside was a letter, handwritten, long, dramatic, full of emotional language. Words like abandonment, betrayal, and disgrace. She wrote about the sacrifices she made for me growing up, about how I had failed the family in their hour of need, about how God would judge me. But near the bottom, one sentence stood out. "You will regret this decision for the rest of your life." I folded the letter slowly. Then I reached into my drawer, pulled out a small fire-safe box, and placed it inside alongside other tokens from my past that I didn't have the heart to throw away but didn't need to see again. Later that afternoon, I made an appointment with a therapist. I found someone who specialized in family dynamics and trauma. When I filled out the intake form, there was a question that asked, "What do you hope to gain from therapy?" I paused, then typed, "I want to stop mistaking guilt for love." That evening, I did something I never thought I would. I blocked my mother's number. I didn't do it out of anger. I did it because I knew the cycle would never end unless I stepped outside of it. For years, I had been waiting for someone to say, "It's okay to stop giving." But no one ever did. So I said it to myself, and it was enough. The next day, I sent an email to the hospital's transplant coordinator. I thanked her for her time and clarity, and formally withdrew myself from consideration. Then I went for a walk. Just me. No phone. No noise. Just the sound of my own footsteps on pavement, steady and certain. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt whole. After I officially withdrew from the donor process, the silence from my family didn't last long. It morphed into something colder, heavier, like walking through fog that knew your name. At first, it was the absence that hit hardest. No calls, no texts, no "how are you" or "are you okay?" I would have preferred yelling. At least that would have meant they still saw me as someone worth engaging with. Instead, I became invisible. Within a week, I heard through a mutual cousin that my mother had started telling people I had abandoned the family, that I was too self-centered to do what was right. A few even said she implied I was unstable, mentally unfit, too emotional to be trusted with such a big decision. It was surreal hearing about your own reputation being rewritten in real time. Then came the posts. I'd never known my mom to use Facebook for anything more than reposting church fundraisers or recipe videos. But now, every few days, there was a new status. Vague enough not to name me directly, but specific enough that everyone knew. Some people talk about love, but when it's time to act, they vanish. Family means nothing if they don't show up when you need them most. My inbox filled with messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Childhood friends, extended relatives, even an old Sunday school teacher. "Hey, just wanted to check in. I heard your brother's really sick. You're in my prayers. Hope you do the right thing. Don't let guilt eat you up later." But the one that finally made me block a dozen people came from Jordan's old college roommate. He messaged me, "I can't believe you're letting your brother die. This is beyond selfish. Hope you can live with that. Live with that." I stared at the screen for a long time. I wondered if they would have cared this much if I'd been the one in that hospital bed. If I were the one fading, would there have been a campaign of pressure and guilt aimed at someone else to save me? I already knew the answer. No one had asked why I said no. No one had asked about the health risks, the long-term consequences, the possibility that I could lose more than I gained. My kidney wasn't the only thing at stake. It was my safety, my stability, my life. Instead, they painted me as a villain, a traitor, a stone-hearted woman too focused on her little apartment and her quiet job to care about blood ties. Meanwhile, Jordan remained silent. Not a word, not a message, not even to curse me out. But the one piece of information I got came oddly enough from my former piano teacher. She still lived in town and still taught a few neighborhood kids. We'd stayed loosely in touch through holiday cards and the occasional email. She called me out of the blue one evening. "I ran into your mom," she said gently. "She was talking about Jordan's health." I didn't pry, but she seemed very tired and very angry. I thanked her and hung up. I didn't explain. I didn't owe anyone the full story anymore. By then, I had started journaling again. Real journaling. Not a to-do list disguised as self-reflection, but actual writing. Every morning before work, I'd sit at the kitchen table with my coffee and write one page. I didn't hold back. I wrote about the guilt, the grief, the rage. I wrote about how strange it was to choose yourself and be punished for it. One entry stood out. They want me to feel like I'm the one who's failed. But what they're really upset about is that I stopped being easy to use. And that's what it was. Not betrayal, not cruelty, just refusal. And when you've been raised to believe your body belongs to the people who raised you, refusal feels like a sin. I stopped checking Facebook. Deleted the app from my phone. I blocked numbers without hesitation. I stopped returning calls. I stopped explaining. I allowed myself to disappear, not as punishment, but as protection. That month, I spent more time outside. I went on long walks without my phone, sat in parks with a book, and let the world be quiet. I started cooking again, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I bought a new set of watercolor paints, not to master them, but to enjoy them. No expectations, no perfection. I even started sleeping better. Some mornings, I woke up and expected to feel regret, to sit up in bed and feel that sharp twist of what if. But I never did, because what no one in my family understood was that I didn't make the decision lightly. I didn't wake up and say no out of spite or revenge. I considered everything: my health, my future, my peace. And when I finally said it out loud, firm and final, it wasn't from a place of coldness. It was the warmest, kindest thing I had ever done for myself. Saying no saved me, and I was done apologizing for it. I didn't plan to retaliate. I didn't feel the need to get back at anyone. I wasn't interested in revenge, but I was interested in closure. One morning, I sat with my therapist. Her name was Rachel, soft-spoken, with kind eyes that never rushed me, and she asked a question that stopped me cold. "What would it look like to reclaim your story?" I blinked. "Not to rewrite it," she continued, "but to own it instead of letting your family define it for you." That thought stayed with me all week. The next Sunday, I opened my laptop, took a deep breath, and started typing. I wrote an email to the transplant coordinator. It wasn't about the kidney. That part was done. I just wanted everything in writing, final, clear, documented. I asked her to officially remove me from the donor registry connected to my brother's case and requested confirmation that no one but me could reverse that decision. She responded within the hour, short and professional. "Your withdrawal has been noted and made permanent unless you initiate a reversal in writing. Thank you for your clarity and honesty throughout this process." That was step 1. Step 2 was practical. I visited my credit union and closed the joint savings account I had opened years ago with my mother, originally meant to help with family emergencies. Jordan had accessed that account multiple times over the years, sometimes without asking. I had let it slide. Now I wouldn't. The teller handed me the final statement. The account had $18 left in it. $18. That's what my trust was worth at the end. Step 3 was my apartment. It was a one-bedroom rental, nothing fancy, but it had become mine in the truest sense. After years of quiet sacrifice, I had built a space where I could breathe. But something inside me was shifting. I didn't want to hide in peace. I wanted to live in it. So I started browsing. A small condo opened up 15 minutes away near a local bookstore I loved. It was bright with wide windows and no shared walls. I called the realtor, scheduled a viewing. 2 weeks later, I submitted my offer, and it was accepted. I didn't tell anyone. Moving day came in the middle of April. Cool breeze, sun through clouds. A few friends from work helped me pack. We played music, ordered takeout, laughed about nothing in particular. It felt easy, uncomplicated, like family, but lighter. At the new place, I unpacked slowly, thoughtfully, no rush. I hung up a print that read, "You do not have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm." Step 4 happened more quietly. I wrote a letter, not to my family, not to Jordan, to myself. I folded it and slid it into the back of my journal. It read, "You are not selfish. You are not cold. You are not responsible for saving people who would not pause to ask if you are okay. You chose yourself, and you survived." Then I closed the book and went on with my day. But there was one last thing I needed to do. On impulse, I opened a blank Word document. No format, no structure, just my name at the top. I started writing my story, not the version they were spreading online, not the half-truths layered with guilt, but the real version, from start to finish. I included everything: the phone calls, the pressure, the silent years, the expectations, the moment my mother said, "Even a stranger would have done more." I wrote about how those words cut deeper than any insult. I wrote about the medical facts they refused to hear, the therapy sessions, the mornings I cried into my coffee. And I ended it not with anger, but with a sentence that surprised even me. I loved them. I still do. But love is not supposed to erase you. I didn't post it online. I didn't send it to anyone. But I printed it. I folded it gently, slipped it into an envelope, and placed it in the drawer next to my passport where I keep the things that matter most. Proof that I told the truth to myself, if no one else. Later that week, I got a text from an unknown number. No name, just, "You really think walking away makes you better than us?" I blocked it without responding. Because the truth is, I don't think I'm better. I just think I'm done. And that finally is enough. The hardest part about cutting off your family isn't the silence, it's what comes before it. The doubt, the guilt, the endless loop of maybe I'm overreacting, and what if they're right? But once you pass through that, there's a strange stillness. And in that stillness, things start to grow. A few weeks after the move, I began waking up before my alarm. No more tightness in my chest. No more instinct to check my phone the second I opened my eyes. Just sunlight on the wall and a quiet mind. One Saturday morning, I walked to the neighborhood cafe. It was a little place with mismatched furniture, soft jazz playing in the background, and baristas who remembered your order after one visit. I brought my journal with me and sat by the window. I didn't write about Jordan, or my mom, or the past. I wrote about the things I wanted to do now: a pottery class, volunteering at the community library, maybe even a solo trip, something I'd always put off because what if the family needs me? I had spent so many years on high alert, always waiting to be summoned, ready to drop my life at a moment's notice. Now the only person I had to answer to was me. I signed up for that pottery class. The first day I was nervous. Everyone seemed to know each other. I stood at the back, hands in my jacket pockets, wondering if I'd made a mistake. But then a woman next to me, gray streaks in her curly hair, clay under her fingernails, turned and smiled. First time I nodded. She grinned. "You're gonna love this. Messy as hell. But it clears the mind." Her name was Jackie. She had 2 adult sons she hadn't heard from in a year and a laugh that filled the whole studio. We sat next to each other every week. She never asked about my family, and I never asked about hers. But somehow we understood each other perfectly. In that class, I started to remember who I was before the guilt. I also started therapy twice a month. Rachel helped me untangle years of confusion. We talked about boundaries, about enmeshment, about the difference between being needed and being loved. She once said, "You've spent your life trying to earn unconditional love by being useful." I asked, "And what happens when I stop being useful?" She smiled gently. "You get to find out who actually sees you." At work, things changed too. I no longer avoided conversations about family during lunch breaks. When someone mentioned their overbearing parent or entitled sibling, I didn't smile and nod and swallow my stories. I spoke. I shared. Sometimes people leaned in and said, "God, I thought it was just me." I wasn't alone. One night, scrolling mindlessly through Reddit, I stumbled on a thread titled, "When I Chose Myself Over Family Expectations." Thousands of comments. People talking about saying no to things that would have broken them. Some stories were light, some were brutal, but every one of them carried the same message. Self-preservation isn't betrayal. Inspired. I wrote a comment, just a short one. I said no to donating my kidney to my brother. My whole family turned on me. But choosing myself saved more than my health. It saved my life. I closed the app, thinking nothing of it. The next morning, my inbox was full. Private messages, replies, people thanking me, sharing their own versions, calling me brave. I didn't feel brave. I felt seen. A week later, I got an email from a small online publication that focused on personal essays. They had seen my comment, asked if I wanted to write about it anonymously if needed. I hesitated. But then I remembered Rachel's question, what would it look like to reclaim your story? So I wrote it, all of it. They published the piece with the title, "The Price of Saying No, Choosing Myself Over Family Obligation." It went viral, hundreds of thousands of views, thousands of comments, some harsh but most supportive. I got messages from people around the world, nurses, mothers, teachers, students, saying thank you, saying me too. And in that wave of strangers, I found something I never got from my own family: validation. A few months later, the publication invited me to speak on a podcast. Just audio, no video, first names only. I said yes, nervous but steady. At the end of the recording, the host asked, "If your family ever hears this, what would you want them to know?" I paused. Then I said that I loved them. But I love myself now too, and that changes everything. When the episode aired, I turned off my phone. Not out of fear, but to give myself space to breathe. I made tea, opened a new journal, and on the first page I wrote, "Choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's sacred." I found out Jordan got the transplant through someone else's Instagram story. A mutual acquaintance, someone I hadn't spoken to since college, posted a photo from the hospital. A smiling group of people around a bed balloons the caption, "Miracles happen, grateful second chance." There he was, Jordan, pale, thinner than I remembered, but alive. Hooked up to tubes, eyes half closed in the kind of post-op haze only painkillers provide. Someone had donated. I didn't know who. I didn't ask. There was a brief flutter in my chest, not guilt, not regret, just a quiet awareness that the ending they wanted happened. And I wasn't part of it. No one called to tell me. Not my mother, not any relatives, no updates, no thank you for being tested, no invitation to re-enter the fold now that the crisis had passed. They had written me out of the story, and I no longer needed to fight for a line in their script. A week later, my aunt, the one who always tried to stay neutral, left me a voicemail. Just her voice cracking a little, saying, "Your brother's surgery went well. Your mom's coping. Just thought you should know." I didn't call back. Not because I was angry, but because I had nothing left to give them. Not energy, not time, not an opening. I had made peace with the space between us. Sometimes I still wondered what they said when my name came up. Did they call me selfish? Cold? Did they believe their version or just repeat it until it felt true? I didn't need to know. About a month after the transplant, I ran into someone from my old neighborhood. We were both standing in line at the grocery store. She recognized me immediately. "Hey, haven't seen you around. You hear about your brother?" I nodded. She smiled. "Glad he pulled through. Your family must be relieved." I didn't respond. She tilted her head. "You doing okay?" That question landed softly. There was no judgment in her voice, just simple human curiosity. And I realized something no one in my family had asked me that in a long, long time. "I am," I said finally. "I actually am." She smiled back. "Good, you deserve that." Later that night, I walked past the spare bedroom in my new place, the one I hadn't quite figured out what to do with yet. It still had boxes, some books, half-assembled shelves, but I had recently painted the walls a soft sage green. Peaceful, clean. Maybe I'd turn it into a writing room, or a guest room, or a place to sit with nothing but quiet. All I knew was that no one in that space would ever have the power to guilt me into disappearing again. I opened my laptop and reread the essay I had written months ago. At the end, I had written, "I'm not the villain of this story. I'm just the one who finally stopped bleeding for people who never offered a bandage." I closed the file, saved it again anyway, and I smiled. Not because anything was perfect, but because I was free. I used to think family meant forever, that it was a bond you couldn't walk away from no matter how heavy it got. That love was proven by how much you were willing to lose for the people who shared your name. But now I understand something deeper. Love, real love, doesn't ask you to disappear. It doesn't measure your worth by what you give up. It doesn't punish you for drawing boundaries. It doesn't demand your body, your silence, or your sanity as proof of loyalty. Family isn't just blood. It's not obligation. It's not sacrifice without end. Family is the people who ask how you're doing even when they're hurting too. It's the ones who listen when you say no and don't make you feel like a monster for saying it. I didn't choose the family I was born into, but I choose myself now. And that choice, quiet, steady, and long overdue, has changed everything. I still love them, in my own way, but I love myself more. And for the first time, that doesn't feel wrong. It feels right. It feels like coming home to a place that finally belongs to me.